Welcome to the All Ambient podcast, where we dig into the creative process, hear untold stories, and explore the brilliant minds behind some of the finest ambient music out there. I'm your host, Mike Graff. I'm excited to be in this together with you. Let's get going. Glad to have you with us on this week's music news edition of the All Ambient podcast. We went over an interesting lawsuit in the music industry that is playing out right now over the big three major labels that are suing a couple generative AI platforms. This is a situation that's going to set the precedent, and it's going to have ramifications for years and years and years. It's kind of a big moment. It's pretty complex, but it really was interesting to dig through this. You're not going to want to miss it. Here we go. Let's dig right into this week's music news. Folks, welcome to another music news edition of the All Ambient podcast. Hanging today with Ben, Kirk, and Marshall, of course. Good to see you guys.
Hey, Mike.
Great to be here.
How is life? I know we've got stuff to talk about, but what's life like? It's summertime, right?
It's full on summer.
Mm-hmm.
It's full on summer, which to me feels a little bit like purgatorious. It's hard.
Yes. Explore that a little bit, but yes, totally.
It's this whole other realm of like, you're not sure if you're supposed to be vacationing or catching up or resting or working.
And then it almost feels weird when you have like a normal work day, but then everyone else is off doing very summer-like activities. And for me, I'm like, man, am I cheating? Am I not? Should I be out and about? Yeah.
They're cheating. You're the good one.
Aw, thanks for the affirmation.
Aw. No, I know the feeling. That's Kirk and I were talking just about that before you came in. It feels like it's just hard. It's a bit harder to, feels like for me at least, keep focused on at least getting some music done, maybe with the same output as you would like during the school year, just with things
groove,
that family are doing
just
and everything going on.
Yeah.
How long is the vacation time for you guys now?
Good question. So typically it's like late May, early June, depending on the school district, but it goes through, it's usually about 3 months, about 12 weeks, 3 months, sort of right in there.
3 months.
So those who end late May usually start a little bit before we have Labor Day in the US. And for up in Minnesota, we typically end early June, but then we don't start until after Labor Day. So Labor Day is usually the first Monday in September. And then the next day is school.
Mm-hmm. That's long. That's a long summer.
It is. Yeah.
Nice.
3 months.
Yep. It is nice.
What is Hong Kong? Like 8 days,
Today
9
is.
days?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Nah, they get in kindergarten. So my eldest is 4. He's in kindergarten. He gets 2 months. So he finishes today. This is his last day.
Yeah.
And then he's going back at about the same time as you guys, just early September.
Right. I knew you guys were, because you're heading off to Thailand pretty soon, right?
Yeah, in a few weeks' time. Yeah.
Amazing.
Be fun.
Sweet. So fun. Indeed. Love that. All right. Summer mode, vacation mode, all the things. Well, man, it is summertime. And it's also, we are at a time where I feel I love these music news episodes where we're starting to kind of focus in on what's going on. And the more that we've begun to perhaps, set these episodes aside, the more I've started kind of, it's funny. It's like when you're car shopping and then all of a sudden you start recognizing, like that car that you're shopping for, you see 400 of them out on the road all of a sudden. Like it just all of a sudden it's, kind of stream of consciousness and you see them everywhere. Now that we're doing and kind of committing to these music news episodes, and I love them, they're great, but maybe my phone or my laptop, maybe they're all just listening to me because my algorithms are starting to smoke with with some music news stuff. It's not a bad thing, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of movement right now. And today I wanted to talk about, Ben, you actually sent over the tweet, and I can't even call it tweet anymore because it's not Twitter, it's X. So what is a post on X even called? Is it an exit? A Y? XYZ?
It's a XYZ.
Yep. There you go. Yep. It's okay. So somebody said something on X. We'll just go with that. But let me read it. And this is, Ben, do you want to give any context? I will read it and we'll kind of talk through it. But is it Rob Abelo? Is that how you pronounce his name?
I mean, your guess is as good as mine.
So Rob Abelo. What's the context on Rob Abelo, Ben? Do you follow his...
I follow his stuff. I get his newsletter. Yeah. It's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah.
For anyone who's not following him, it's a good resource on music industry news, but also kind of Web3 music and kind of where things are going and just some of his kind of insights and thoughts. So I like it. It's definitely worth having as part of a wider arsenal of music news that one is following.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the moment that you said that his newsletter was worth following when you were messaging us, and then I read that thing he posted on X, immediately I was like, oh man, I am probably missing the boat a lot on whatever he's sending out in that newsletter, because if it's anything like his thoughts on this thing and just staying abreast to what's going on, I'm sure he's got a lot of good stuff to say and a lot of good stuff for us to talk about, a lot of good stuff for a lot of artists to talk about. But let me read this, and I would love for us to just kind of chew through the concept of what is happening. So right now, breaking news, all three major labels, that is Sony, Warner, and UMG, all three major labels are suing AI music generators Suno and Udio. So the RIAA is coordinating the lawsuits on behalf of the big three. Rob, his hammer dropped, which is true. This is no small thing. So here are the details. Today, 2 federal copyright infringement lawsuits were filed against Suno in the District of Massachusetts and against Udio in the Southern District of New York. Well, it's been clear to anyone with ears that Suno and Udio have both been trained on copyrighted material for their AI models with zero transparency, with zero transparency, no plans to compensate the original sources or to seek any licensing. So the RIAA calls this is a really good quote, mass infringement of copyrighted sound recordings copied and exploited without permission by 2 multi-million-dollar music generation services. AI companies, like all other enterprises, must abide by the laws that protect human creativity and ingenuity. There is nothing that exempts AI companies from playing by the rules. And there are ways to do this and to play by the rules. They could, 1, train only on catalogs that they've licensed, 2, compensate artists and songwriters, and 3, just be transparent, just fully transparent. It will take longer and will require actually caring about creatives, but that's what Rob suggests is how we could play by the rules. And that makes sense to me. So then just last week, Gen AI dropped their fully licensed and transparent AI model, which is crazy. Voice cloning companies like Voice Swap and Sound Labs are actually doing the same. So these companies are dropping. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Music, Rob continues, music isn't anti-AI, it's anti-theft. As the RIAA states, the music community has embraced AI, and we are already partnering and collaborating with responsible developers to build sustainable AI tools centered on human creativity that put artists and songwriters in charge. So how does the RIAA know that Suno and Udio have used copyright materials? They cite 4 examples. Suno's lead investor all but admitted it with this statement. If Suno had deals with labels when this company got started, I probably wouldn't have invested in it. I think they needed to make this product without the constraints, which is, that's pretty wild. Number 2, Udio execs said that their AI was trained on, quote, a larger amount of publicly available and high quality music, unquote, that was, quote, obtained from the internet. It's so just,
That seems like the best place to get it.
Well, exactly. And then, the final part of that quote was, it's the best quality music that's out there. I mean, it just feels, just say it instead of dance it. Just say that you're doing the thing. So anyway. And then it looks like some of them even had left producer tags on the output, which is, just like a mistake in the metadata, but it actually had some trails there that showed what was happening. And then of course, just the obvious sound alikes are out there being generated by users everywhere. So the end of his article, I know it was a little bit of a long read, but worth it. Who will win? It all comes down to fair use. Either way, we'll finally have an answer on the legality of generative AI music training in the US. I hope it's an answer that protects artists and songwriters. We can do this in a way where more than 1 or 3 AI tech companies win. So there's the thought. The nutshell on all that is that the AI companies are getting sued by the big 3, and that is no small thing. There are it is a multi-million, billion-dollar industry. I think it says a couple things. I'm going to shut my mouth, but I know that it says that this is a serious enough problem where they're going to take it seriously. Like it is enough of a threat to the dollars of, certainly it's the major labels who are trying to protect themselves. But I think a lot of indie, wherever you find yourself on the scale of super indie to successful indie to, being on a label deal to being one of the most successful artists in the world, this is an interesting conversation. I think another unique part of this conversation is that this lawsuit probably wouldn't be happening if the ability to copy those things, if it just stunk, right? If the quality was just awful, I don't think anyone would care. If it was just like bottom barrel, you weren't convinced at all with your ears that you were hearing, AI, you're like, oh yeah, that's just trash. Like that's not an actual copy. I mean, you can hear the fact that it's generated, but in reality, it's really deceptive. You can pull the wool over people's eyes really fast. And there are some really cool creative uses, of course, with a lot of these different AI tools, but just straight up plagiarism and stealing IP and, like the lawsuits are saying, like not protecting the creativity and ingenuity of people. That's obviously a massive line that's been crossed. So thoughts? Well, I don't think we have anything in particular that we need to try to hash out on this. I'm just curious kind of where your guys' hearts sit on this, because it's no small thing. And yeah, it's affecting everybody.
I'm glad that the big three are stepping in here.
Yeah.
Because it kind of helps, there's been a lot of chatter about, smaller artists and labels trying to maybe do some kind of lawsuit or whatever, but to have, the three biggest industry icons and companies say, hey, no, enough is enough is helpful for everyone in this context, I think.
Yeah. And I imagine they have some type of evidence that they've been amassing and, it's like I would imagine that they've been building a case before they would just jump in. So that'll be interesting to see how it plays out,
Yeah. I think like like you just said, Ben, like there's just been so much floating around. I think for me, like, I feel like I've followed most of this conversation, but there's what feels like so many different talking points that it is just hard. Mm-hmm. It's just hard to follow so much of it, but it's like felt like it's been on the brink of like, okay, this sounds like it's getting pretty intense with some of the directions that it's been going. So my first impression of reading this today was like, okay, it feels like it's a step in the right direction. It's something that I would hope would happen, that like, as these things are, the people are acknowledging like, yeah, we have to protect music and artists. And I'm hopeful that it, will continue to go that way, as I'm sure the AI stuff will obviously continue to evolve and push back in its own way too. But yeah, I think it's an encouraging initial step,
Yeah, at the maybe rawest way to put it, it feels as though, if you were to even take the artistry out of it, if it was just a numbers equation, I really appreciate that the recording industry Association of America, they are saying that it is worth us protecting this instead of it getting completely, if it was just a single pie and it was sort of a scarcity mentality thing, which I don't think it is. If there was only a certain amount of revenue that was able to be generated, period, in music, and now AI is potentially siphoning off a bunch of that, in the sense of people are using generative AI to create stuff that really should at the very least be paying, mechanical royalties or licensing royalties to, the artists that were the originator of the generative idea that then turned into the AI. So the fact that the numbers show that this is a big enough deal for them to stand up on it, I think the severity level has increased to the point where the writing is on the wall a little bit. If something doesn't change, there could very well be a reckoning. Like people could just absolutely, you hit the right AI prompts and you put in enough computing power and buy enough credits for whatever platform that you want to do this on, and, harness as many machines or as many, prompts as you can and just continue to generate stuff. You could decimate a boatload of people's catalogs really fast, and maybe not even in a way that is trying to slander the original artist, like in a way where you're trying to muck up their catalog or give the impression that you impersonate, or really that you're impersonating somebody with the AI model that's been trained on their material, but more so like able to create a level of quality of content that was trained off of Ben or trained off of Kirk or trained off of, all the way up through all the majors. I think that there is something heartening a little bit that at least someone somewhere in some position of power acknowledges that the value of you, Marshall, sitting, doing what you're doing and creating is more valuable to this world than, hey, this guy does a thing, but why don't we just, train like without any consequences whatsoever, let's just train an AI model on his material and just yank it and just have it spit out as much new material, quote, as possible. And we don't have to label it as Be Still the Earth, but it's going to sound pretty, quote, Be Still the Earthy, and off it goes. Like my heart sinks at that possibility, but I know that this feels a little bit like the light at the end of the tunnel, because if it's big enough that it's going to court, and that is going to court with the big three, yeah, maybe there is hope. Because I've been feeling pretty not hopeful about AI stuff. Not that we're all just completely done for, that there is no chance for us to pivot or find other ways to continue to create in ways that will be great. But yeah, this is hopeful. It's a hopeful thing, I think. Yeah.
That particular, like just what we just read, I think it's fair to also acknowledge the way he put, like that, like this is a real thing that's happening. Like we can't deny that there's AI and there's technology and that there are ways that this can be used, which, is proper ways like licensing and things like this. There's there's clearly ways that it can't be used, which is what is happening here. So I can appreciate that. And I know a lot of the libraries and some of the sync folks that we work with in our circle, like there's stuff going on in those worlds too, but it's like, and that's maybe a whole other conversation as well. But I think there's, at least being maybe not necessarily transparent, but they're not just starting to, at least to my knowledge, rip off the artists and use their music without us knowing, they're reaching out and speaking about those things. So it's like, let's acknowledge that this is happening. There's a way to do it. Technology won't stop moving. We just have to kind of, let's think carefully and intentionally about what we're doing here.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. Well, and like to that effect, I want to hear everything that Kirk and Ben have to say on this too, but that it sets a little bit of a precedent, right? Where like if this is being called out on the grandest scale there is, that gives even more wind to if it happens on a smaller scale, if it's something that happens within a certain platform or a certain licensing platform, and there is just fraudulent behavior that is training on any of us or any of whoever. It looks like there is now legal precedents to take action on this, and that's that it's being taken. At least currently, who knows what's going to happen in court, but at least currently that this is being flexed on as this is going to get sorted out, and hopefully the hammer comes down on it. And it'll just be really interesting to see how this plays out. I think the worst thing that could happen is if it was just kind of a little slap on the wrist and maybe just a little, just like a little fine or whatever, but still is just a giant. Anyway, I digress. Go ahead. I'd love to hear Kirk, man. What do you have to say?
Yeah, to me, it feels a little bit like kind of when Napster arrived on the scene. What was that, like 15, 20 years ago? When you're kind of in that state of flux and there's this new technology, and the technology itself, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a good technology, but it's being used in a way that is not benefiting the artists and the creators. It's just being used because it's a cool new technology, and the industry itself hasn't caught up to know how to use that. And it took a few years, but of course you get Apple iTunes, which was revolutionary at the time, and then that kind of translates over to Spotify and other things. So it kind of feels like we're in that moment, and what the industry and artists and the AI companies need to find is what the right use case is. Like, how are people going to legally use this in a way that is exciting and has a place within the industry, not just kind of, because at the moment people just randomly kind of creating fun stuff and then some of them are posting it to Spotify or whatever, but basically it's just used in that context. And what is the genuine use case for this amazing technology? And for sure there will be some use cases for artists themselves within DAWs maybe, and kind of idea creation and all that kind of stuff. But from a kind of end user perspective, from a listener perspective, where does this fit in and how does it benefit artists?
Right.
the use case, that will be an enlightening moment. And I think that's going to probably come from either one of these companies restructuring after having to fight to stay alive, or it's going to be some other company who's waiting in the wings to see how a couple things play out, and then they go for it. And so like the use case, I think, is going to, answering that question, I think is going to help shape at least the beginning of whatever this other company is. That's exactly what I was thinking, is like, okay, this is another Napster moment, and there's going to be something. But even iTunes, what they did was slightly illegal. You know, they just kind of did it, and they're like, "What are you going to do? We're doing it." And then, by the way, here's money. Yeah, here's a bunch of money, and the labels are like, "Oh, okay, we'll let you keep doing it for taking 30% or whatever it is." So there might be something like that. But what they did was they created a structure that actually pays the owners. You know, and so if you do that, then they're going to back off at least a little because they're getting something rather than nothing. And so I think whatever this company is, or whatever the lawsuit brings in a restructuring, it's kind of like, okay, so I think about like some of the music libraries, or I think about some of the sample pack companies like a Splice or whatever, to where it's almost like, man, you want to get on, like you want to be a label on Splice, or you want to be a producer that has a pack on Splice, because now it's like a place to go to that's good, because now you get a little bit of royalties, a little bit of recognition, And on the libraries, it's like you have all these filters, and the filters have all these words, and the words are kind of vague, but they definitely point to a style. But those styles point back to artists, and lots of artists who've contributed over decades, you know? Yeah. And so I imagine that there will be a way for, whether you have to start over from scratch or backlog or whatever. I'm sure, you know, it's kind of Wild West how they put it together, but it's like, if you have the opportunity essentially to feed into this AI, then you get thrown into the pot, your band or your style. Like, let's say there's 100 bands that go into the funk, whatever, and they each have 20 songs from the catalog, and each one of those is a percentage of whatever. And then all that stuff gets tagged in the filter, and the filter gets tagged to the download, and it all becomes, you know, this new creation now has 100% of something, and it's all, you know, and then that goes out into the world and generates money, or it's just a one-time transaction at the moment of download. They get their micro sync fee, and then now it's a new creation out there in the world. So it's like, it could happen like that, but it could also happen to where there's still a stamp on that, and there's a new ISRC code that then filters back to, you know, it's all going to be micro, but because it's all digital, it's like, it's not outside the realm of impossibility if you build it correctly on the back end. And so it's almost like, if someone does it right, it's like, if I was smart enough and actually want to do that, which I have less than no desire, negative, lots of desire to do anything like that. But it's like, you could build something to where people are like, oh, this is like an opportunity to like actually be in this thing that's feeding this new thing that's eventually pay artists, you know, even if it's microcents at a time, but you scale that over, you know, millions of users, and it's like, oh. Or someone could like generate their own custom. I imagine it's like, okay, is Spotify even thinking about like, how do we create this thing? Like, maybe they are. And it's like, now they have a playlist that you can like filter out your 5 favorite bands, right? And you're like, I want a sad song that is by these 5 bands. I love all these vocalists, and they're all built into the thing, and all those people get paid, and you get the song, and you get to listen to it. And it's made just, you know, out of your imagination, your prompt. It's like, okay, I don't know. Is that, you know, if everybody's getting paid, then I guess it's all good. But
yeah. Well, then I think the interesting gray space in that equation is like how much one would hope that the lion's share of money that would be generated from that would go straight to the artists in which the content that was used to, you know, generate this, you know, this AI cooked thing. But I could see, because really, like, when you think about it, I mean, if you're using existing content to train an AI model, at that point, all that you're doing is you're either thinking of a prompt, or you're just Googling what other prompts other people are using and just typing in and like, boop. And so like, by typing in and hitting the return key, am I now like the quote creator of
author.
this, right? The author of
Arranger.
it, or
You're
is the
arranger.
platform, that I did, or is the AI, like, it was done on OpenAI. So they're the ones who have, the lion's share, right? And is it just this little like piecemeal, like 15 or 20% of what happens, actually goes to the artist? And that's, I think that equation is going to be really interesting, because like the new stuff wouldn't exist at all had it not been for those artists. I get that there would probably be another artist who would just say, sure, hey, I'll throw my hat in the ring, because, there will be. But yeah, it has to be artist centric at that point. Otherwise, yeah, I don't know. I think it could fall apart real fast, but that'll be there's a lot of unanswered questions in how this gets divvied out and this and that. Interesting. I have a silly question for you all. If you were approached by, on the other side of this, all the legality gets ironed out, and you were you were approached by someone that just said, hey, we will pay you blah. Like we'll give you a lump sum if we are now allowed the opportunity to use your entire catalog to train our AI models and generate music that is very similar to yours. It won't go under the name, We Dream of Eden, Be Still the Earth, Antarctic Wastelands, Dear Gravity, anybody, whoever. It won't go under that name, but it will bear a lot of the same characteristics of those, because we trained on, on your music. And maybe not even a kick on the back end, maybe a small one, but like we don't have to name numbers, but like, is just the sheer concept of that something that makes you guys want to throw up a little bit? Or is that just kind of the inevitable thing that's going to happen someday, which at that point, then it almost becomes less about, and like it could almost be a cool thing in the sense that like, I want to create a sound that is signature to me, right? Instead of, how it kind of lines up with maybe other artists in the space or this and that. Like, I want it to feel like me, especially because if somebody's going to train on my entire catalog, like what makes Dear Gravity different than pick another artist in our, stable of friends or whatever. Yeah, that day might be coming. What does that look like to you guys? Does it sound awful? Does it sound awesome? What does it sound like?
No, it's not good. That like for me, that is not a good situation. I tell you why. I think there's two reasons. It's not.
Give me the money, girl.
It's not. I feel there's two issues with it. One is the kind of one-off payment. I think if it's a kind of ongoing royalty model, then that's one small step in the right direction. But the other thing is like where people can use that music. So I would be okay with that concept if it's like, hey, this is a licensing site and people can generate music for use in, say, YouTube videos or like, non-commercial stuff, wedding videos or whatever, those kind of things. Like that's fine as long as I'm getting some kind of kick at the back end when people generate using the AI model that has been trained on my music. But when it comes to releasing music to, say, Spotify, I personally would not want that, because you want to protect what you have created and the sound that you've created. And I think too many things that sound too similar just muddies the water to the point that you just end up with this kind of muddy gray soup.
Yeah.
Homogenous.
No one likes that muddy gray soup.
I think that's a great point. The whole idea of the use to where it's like the difference between licensing music and like doing that kind of thing and then re-uploading it to a distribution service. That's like a totally different model.
Yeah.
I think whenever I hear lump sum for music, that's always to me like a red flag. To me, it's like, if you don't honor the relationship enough to like say, hey, I want to make money with this stuff and I'd like you to succeed if this succeeds. That feels way more equitable than like, I want to buy it from you and then make money on it for the next 70 years or whatever. It's like, oh. So yeah, the lump sum thing always, whatever it is, it's usually a red flag. But yeah, it would be hard to say how you stop it. Like, how do you stop someone from generating it and then re-uploading it to Spotify, Unless it was either an extra fee or a tag, or it's like, but I don't want to be tagged on that. It's like, I don't want to be reassociated with a derivative,
Well, hold on though. What if it was the lump sum, but then you could use the service to create your own albums, and then you could have your own massive output?
Yeah, just go on vacation. And then you're paying yourself
Then
to
you're helping
to do
you're helping
yourself.
your productivity level there.
There will definitely be artists who do that. As soon as there's like an open source AI kind of thing that you can just train on your own stuff, there's a ton of artists who are just like, yep, I'm off.
Come on.
Here's my new album.
Yeah, it's good enough for
I've heard there's several
licensing, right?
major artists who are already doing that and we don't even know about it. Ew. That was a joke, but it's probably true. It's probably true. It's probably
all
somebody.
jokes here.
It's not going away.
No,
They
it's
got to
not.
figure something out.
It kind of makes my stomach churn a little bit. Like I'm fascinated by the tech, but I'm also like my heart just gets wrenched for the potential bottoming out of the ingenuity and creativity of human beings being able to keep bringing that into the world in a viable way, in a way that earns enough momentum for them to keep saying yes to it. Because like those people won't disappear, but if there's all of a sudden like zero revenue attached to it because you can just generate the heck out of anything, like there will be much, much fewer people who say yes to it. And again, not that it's about everything has to make money, but it would be really nice to feed my family for sure. And to be able to do it in ways that are, just the most creatively satisfying for me. And so, yeah, this is equal parts fascinating, but also just a little dystopian and
Yeah. Kind of switching gears a little bit, but it's like the voiceover stuff that just dropped with a company that just launched AI voice. And other companies, I'm sure, that are doing it. But it's like, okay, like that's thousands of people who've just lost jobs, or at least lost those jobs, and are going to have to pivot to figure out other ways to do their thing.
Yeah.
And it's real. That's real. And I think those kind of things are going to happen in all the spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's going to be paying attention enough to know how to build your business. Because on the flip side, there's guys who are doing stuff. I follow this one dude, Mark Sibilia. He's a guy in Nashville, and he does covers and original music and all this kind of stuff. And he's just doing his thing and doing it in front of people. And it's great, and it's creative, and it's authentic, and people dig it, and they're following him, and he's building a business, because of technology's accessibility to do things.
Yeah.
And so there's always, I have to believe, and I have to keep coming back to the idea that there's always going to be people who want to be with people. There's people who want to connect with creative things that are made by people.
Yeah.
There's some things that pay the bills, and some of those are going to change, and some of them are just going to straight up go away.
Yeah.
But I think we create because we love to do it and because we have to do it. And so that's not going to change. And then it's just going to be paying attention enough to know, like, how do we connect with people in a way that's sustainable to keep doing the thing.
And I think as artists, it's a reminder and also almost an incentive to kind of make your music feel as real and as kind of human as possible.
Yeah.
Especially with like instrumental music. Like how am I bringing in, kind of allowing for imperfection to appear in the music? How am I, using real instruments as much as possible? How am I doing those kind of things? And I'm aware that AI can still kind of replicate a lot of that stuff, but it's just that one step closer to being just real human music. And I do feel that there's going to be a genuine desire from people for that, the more AI music just kind of gets into the market.
Yeah. I think the people that might perceive this as a threat a little bit more would be those who have a little bit less of a signature and are a little bit more middle ground, in our genre or in any genre, across the board. Like if you're not putting your neck out there and kind of what you said, Ben, where like if this doesn't feel human, if this doesn't feel like a genuine expression of, a creative human being, like thought process, ingenuity, all that, then the less signature it feels, the easier it is to replicate, right? The more intricate it can be, and not to intricate, like let's add more notes or, what I'm saying, but the more intricate it is, the more signature it is, the more difficult it will be for that to be cloned in a way that is passable as, the real thing. And I think that it'll be interesting to see how that plays into it all. And man, I might even, an interesting part of all this, we might see more and more of the rise of watching people And, I know that there's plenty of reels and videos and all that stuff all over social of musicians already doing this, but it might even pour more fuel on the fire of watching people create what they create. Like actually here, this sound is being birthed by me playing this and twisting this and doing this, as opposed to, AI prompt, do the thing, click, and away it goes. Like, to actually watch the process of art coming to life certainly makes it more, it's not only alibi in a sense, where like, hey, this was actually created by human hands, but it also lends itself to the beauty of creation in and of itself, the beauty of bringing something from nothing. And I know that like we as humans, that's something that fascinates us all in a lot of senses. So yeah, I think that there is silver lining in the sense that it will not decimate everybody and everything, but it certainly will have an impact, and we'll just have to see what that is. But thank you, Big Three, for putting some lawsuits into motion that, regardless of what the immediate monetary impact of those things is for those labels and how much of a lawsuit gets slammed on these AI models on Udio and on Suno, that it will set a giant precedent for everything moving forward. And I am hoping very optimistically that it's going to go really well. So we shall see. Awesome.
Yep.
Thanks for chewing through that with me, y'all. And thanks for just bringing just every perspective, every bit of wisdom. Always helpful. Love it. Until the next bit of music news that happens to come our way, let's call it. Thank you for listening to the All Ambient podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you can catch every conversation we have with all these incredible people who share the same passion. I'm looking forward to the next time, and I hope you are too. Can't wait to see you then, and until then, have an incredible day. Here's hoping this music and the heart behind it makes your day and life that much better. We'll see you next time.